It's time for the Granada Forum radio show. Right now, live on air with your host, Granada, Wendy.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Granada Forum radio program. I'd like to thank my co-host, Mr. Nick Pearson.
Hey. Hey, I'm still slow getting to that mute button sometimes, I'm telling you.
Okay. And I'm going to thank my wonderful producer, who we can't live without, Mr. Richard Kane.
Hi there.
Thank you. And, by the way, I want to say hello to Red, who helps us a lot in various situations. I want to thank you, Red. I'm glad you're feeling so much better and cheerful and doing all the things that you used to like to do. So we're going to see you at Cancer Control, so it's going to be a lot of fun. Red's going to be there, and so I'll have some fun there. I want to say hello, Red. So, hello, Red. You're listening. And by the way, this is Revolution Radio. And by the way, real quick too, it is the first. It was the third. It's the 3rd of August. So it's the first Friday of August. The year is going fast. So it is the 3rd. We're going to do a roundtable tonight, ladies and gentlemen. So we have lots of great stories, various people speaking their minds. So it's going to be quite eventful. Next week we do have Deborah Tavares for www.stopthecrime.net. That's www.stopthecrime.net. On the 17th, we have the nuclear hot seat lady, and her correct name, Nick, is...
Yeah. Again, who was that again you were saying?
Okay, the nuclear hot seat.
That's Libby Hallaby.
Libby Hallaby, yeah. So we're having her on the 17th. On the 24th, we're going to have Deborah Tavares. And then on the 31st, we'll be at the Cancer Control Society, ladies and gentlemen, live at the 46th Annual Cancer Control Convention, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 2018, at the Glendale Hilton Hotel in Glendale, California. So we're going to be there live, and that's going to be a lot of fun for a couple of days. And then go to www.cancercontrolsociety.com. That's www.cancercontrolsociety.com. This is for all the alternative therapies to cancer control. And unbelievable stuff, guys. And learn about the prevention of control of cancer through the nutrition, test, and non-toxic cancer therapies such as Laetrile, Garrison, Hoxi, Polyma, as enzymes, and autoimmune therapies, from medical doctors to clinical researchers, nutritionists, and authors. So it's going to be fantastic. We're looking forward to that. I'll be calling Frank and make sure. I'm going to call a few people to see if they want to be have a nice show for Friday night for us. And you can go to www.cancercontrolsociety.com. That's cancercontrolsociety.com, www.cancercontrolsociety.com. And also the phone number is 323. That's 323. 663-7801. That's 323 area code 663-7801. And so we're looking forward to that. And by the way, Tuesday, September 4th, for $100, they have that doctor symposium where they, Monday, September 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, Saturday, Sunday, and that, Saturday and Sunday, they do that. And then September 4th is the doctor symposium for $100. They have all the doctors come and speak, just the doctors. And then on the 5th, Saturday, September 5th, they have the tour to Mexico. That's always interesting, and then September 22nd as well. That's just $100, and they take you down. They give you lunch and dinner or whatever, and the various clinics down there. And it's very educational. It's just very very eye-opening, and they can introduce you to all kinds of wonderful things and stuff like that. So, and additionally, to learn about creation, Diaz Maso, oxygen, herbal, cellular, electric magnet therapy. So it's just all kinds of good stuff like that. So anyway, that's that for them, and we'll be in touch with Frank very shortly. By the way, this is Revolution Radio. We are the #1 commercial-free, listener-supported internet talk radio station in the world. We are at freedomslips.com. That's freedomslips.com. And also, too, you can get us at, I believe, revolution.radio. That's revolution.radio. So they can get us over there, too. Okay. Also, too, the Natural Health Solution Expo, they have moved it. It's now the Natural Health Solution Expo weekend. That will be postponed till next year, which will be 2019, and sometime in March, and they're going to give you the exact dates and everything, so no problem. But if you'd like to call a lovely lady, because she's a great lady, her phone number is 562-212-3479. That's 562-212-3479. That will be held next March, and we will be there. So that'll be good. They're just changing the dates on that, so no problem. Sometimes that happens. So that'll be next March for 2019. And again, her phone number is 562-212-3479. That's a National Health Solution Expo weekend, and that will be a wonderful thing to attend. So we'll be there too. By the way, I'll mention a few websites. Check out a lot of chemtrails in the air. Check out laskywatch.org. That's laskywatch.org. We're going to try to get them back on. Also to geoengineeringwatch.org. That's geoengineeringwatch.org. Also to check out InfoWars, always InfoWars.com, always for information there. Jason Goodman for Truth. That's his website is www.crowdsourcethetruth.com. That's crowdsourcethetruth.com. Also check out George Webb. That's georgewebb.com, georgewebb.com. Good stuff there from George. Kara Cassidy for projectcamelot.org. She spoke last weekend here on David Adair with many other guests last weekend in Washington. Check them out. And check out her website at www.projectcamelot.org. There you go. Also, to check out our Revolution homepage, too, real quick. Definitely, if you want to leave equivalent to a cup of coffee, we appreciate to keep the paid programming on the air. As well as if you go to Nighthawk, he'll do a special for a $100 donation, how to grow, plant, and store ETC, everything under the sun, for a donation of $100. But they give you like 3,500 seeds, so it's very good. It's a very good donation. So we thank you for that. A couple more websites. Let me think. Jeff Runt's got a great website. What's the one? Nick, give me a couple extra websites you want to just put out there real quick. My mind's a blank right now. Secure Team. The Secure Team's got a great website, secureteam.com. What's a few, Nick, that you know?
I would say go to gunownersamerica.org. I believe they are. They're really good gun rights groups, better than the NRA as far as I'm concerned. With all the liberal hysteria, freaking out over straws at this point. Who knows where they're gonna go next? But they're a really good organization to be part of. Larry Pratt's head of that one.
Yeah.
John Birch Society. Go to jbs.org. They're a pretty good group. They've been fighting the communists for forever and been warning us about what's been going on and about to happen.
Yeah, and we did see, me and Bob saw the movie last night, Birth of a Nation. We'll talk about that later in the program, so I'll bring that up.
Death of a Nation.
Death of a Nation.
Death of a Nation, not Birth, sorry, I blew that one.
I was going to say, if you want to see something interesting with the John Birch people, go back onto YouTube and take a look at this video, Robert Welch, 1954, I believe it was. And that's Welch. I think it's Welch or Welch, I don't remember. It's Welch. And look at the video, what this guy's talking about, and it will blow your mind as exactly everything that's going on today, what this guy is talking about.
Wow.
So
I'll have to check that one out. And someone mentioned a few websites, and just because we think it's important to get information out. And also, what's Bob? What's the other guy's? Stephen D. Kelly. That's an interesting website.
Oh, yeah.
To say the least. Stephen D.
Yeah, Truth Cat Radio.
There you go, Truth Cat Radio.
But you know what? Even when you mentioned George Webb is just on YouTube.
Yeah, he's
on YouTube. And then also Truth Leaks. If you want to go to Twitter, his handle is Truth Leaks.
Yeah.
But Stephen D. Kelly is just amazing. I cannot believe all the pedophilia stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, I know. It's just everything. Yeah. So we absolutely give a few websites out tonight. And just one other thing I'm going to mention, and I forgot my train of thought. There you go. That's how it happens. Quick, get furious, fast and furious. We've given a few websites out. If I remember a few more, we'll give them out. But
also, don't forget to check us out on YouTube. We have our own Granada Forum channel. If you want to check out some of our old past shows, or check out some of the older videos from Granada Forum from the Wayback Machine.
There you go.
When Granada Forum was actually live in front of an audience. You can see some of the speakers. I mean, Ted Gunderson spoke at one point.
Dr. Stanley Monteith spoke.
Yeah, lots of people.
Lots of people spoke. I mean, oh God, what's that wonderful lady? And I got her name on my tip of my tongue, and I can't get her out.
Oh, there was
Joan Beyond. Remember Joan Beyond? Joan Beyond.
Joan Beyond, and of course Joyce Riley, which we can't say enough about. Joyce Riley passed as well, and she, great stuff. I mean, that's a great guest in the past.
You can also find us on Facebook. You can go to the Granada Forum group, and there's a bunch of interesting articles posted up on there, along with our radio shows as well. So take a gander and join up. We need more viewers.
There you go.
So
real quick to
rents.com.
Rents.com for Rents. Yeah, Jeff Rents. He's got a good website. But George Webb is great. George Webb is good too. Crowdsourcethetruth.com. He's had Charles Artel every Sunday for the last, I think, year and a half or year. Boy, the stuff that they got on Hillary and the foundation is just beyond words. So good stuff there. So.
Is it GeorgeWebb.com?
No, it's just...
No, just go to George Webb YouTube. George Webb YouTube.
Yeah, on YouTube.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's over 3,000 videos.
The stuff on the Iran brothers that he has and is beyond words. It's just unreal. Yeah, good stuff there, George.
Foundations, Hillary's foundations, she was getting money from a lot of the military-industrial complex.
She got money from the Russians and then tried to bring...
She sold the uranium line to the Russians.
She stole money from Haiti Relief and dumped it into her foundation.
Oh, $2 billion.
She also stole a lot of kids.
I mean, how does somebody who spent their entire life practically in public service, I mean, after she got kicked off the Nixon investigation,
right?
Between her and Bill... doing public service, being elected officials at whatever level they're, amass a fortune of $1 billion. I mean, they were getting money handed to them, hand over fist from the globalists. I mean, that's not even news at this point. I mean, that's just well known. And all the crooked dealings that she did with everybody. I mean, and of course, she's like Teflon because, she's worse than John Gotti as far as I can tell. I mean, Christ, everybody that's going to turn witness against her, they're not Sammy the Bull Gravano. They're not going to survive in prison because they're never going to make it there. They're going to get robbed in Washington, D.C., and it's going to be a robbery gone wrong, with 2 bullets to the back, or they're going to kill themselves with 2 bullets to the back of the head, and it's going to be called a suicide.
Yeah, there's Amina, Arkansas. There's the Clinton Chronicles 1 and 2. There's the death and murder of Vincent Foster. There's tons of stuff. Oh yeah, on them. Unbelievable. The movie that just came out with, real quick, we'll get to you, John. Barry Seal. It's called American Me. Tom Cruise starred in it. This is what I can tell you. It's decent. I mean, I give it a thumbs up because it shows enough information to show what the Clintons were up to, what the CIA was doing, and a few other things. And basically, there's enough information there that I think you'll enjoy the movie. But it's on cable right now. They've really kind of blackballed it as far as being in the box office because the average person just didn't understand it, and knew about it. But I think you can catch it on your Cinemax or HBO or something. And it's called American Me, and Tom Cruise plays Barry Seal, but. There's enough information there. If you see it, you'll understand it, and it's good. The other one we do. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it was an okay movie. I watched. They took a couple of liberties, I think, with it. There were some parts that they threw in there that didn't happen that they threw in for dramatic effect, which all movies will do. But quite honestly, I think they didn't push the envelope hard enough with it.
This is just, it's definitely a basic introduction, but there's enough for the average person to watch it and understand there's stuff going on.
I think Jeremy Renner did a lot better with
Kill the Messenger. Yeah. I mean, he actually should have been nominated. He was so good in it. He should have been nominated for Academy Award. And of course, they blackballed the movie so bad, Nick, that they didn't. But he literally for the part of Gary Webb, he should have been nominated, if not won it, for the Academy Award, because it's Academy Award performance that Jeremy Renner plays for Kill the Messenger.
But here's the thing. The thing with Kill the Messenger was they really did show how the smokescreen came down around all the drug importation going on with the CIA and the DEA, and how it was all funneled to the inner cities.
Yeah.
You know, and as soon as the information started coming out, immediately they targeted the people who were reporting on it, which of course was Gary Webb.
Right.
With Tom Cruise's movie, they showed him doing all the the basic stuff. You know, he was going down, running guns down to the Nicaraguans when he was supposed to be. He's supposed to be running them over. You know, during Iran Contra. Well, whatever it is. Plus, he was running the drugs all back and dropping them off and everything. But they tried to keep the drug running and the CIA disconnected from each other. They tried to make it look like he was doing this on his own.
Yeah, I know they were.
And it was kind of like it was like there is no way that the CIA is going to know that this guy is running dope in to the country when he's supposed to be doing something else, and going to let him keep on doing it. I mean, it just isn't going to happen.
Well, historically, the drug running operations, the drug industry has been run by the elites. Well, dating back to way back through the British East India Company back in the late 1700s and early 1800s.
Oh yeah, they were running opium. They were running opium way back.
Absolutely, Carlos. Absolutely.
Yeah,
but I just think they in this.
A lot of people don't know that the Russell Trust was part of that venture of the British East India Company, which was the biggest corporation in the world at the time.
Yeah.
But the Russell Trust and the Russell family were part of that. And guess what? They were the ones that started or played a big part in the startup of Yale University. Okay? And a couple of other universities. Yale University was under the influence of the Russell Trust, drug money. Can you believe that?
At this point, I'll believe just about anything. I have no problem believing how crooked that people up on the top are. I mean, they've been running dope into this country and every other country in the world for forever.
Yeah.
And then they're blaming everything on the Mexican drug cartels, and it's just like, are you kidding me? You think the cartels aren't connected too at this point? So, but I just think that the movie that Tom Cruise made really left a lot of holes open that should have been closed. It would have been a much better movie.
Yeah, well, I think that was done purposely, though, Nick.
Yeah, absolutely, it was done purposely.
I mean, they watered it down, but they're just for like basic people who, like Tom Cruise and wants to see an interesting movie. There's enough introduction to make the connections on a few levels there, and at least they did that,
Well, even if they didn't like in the film try to make it as a direct connection, they could have put all the little pieces in place.
Oh yeah.
And just went, okay, this is all moving in that direction. Never saying that that's exactly what's happening, but let the audience have enough information to sit back and steer them that way and say, hey, show them that this is what's going on, and let them make that the connection for themselves. That was one of the things I liked about Kill the Messenger.
Yeah.
It was that I think the writers on it did a really good job.
Right.
Plus, it was all you had people on the street already talking about their CIA connections anyway. I mean, Ricky Ross was a big one.
Yeah.
But where they could make the connections directly, and when Gary Webb started reporting on it, that was the huge connection right there. And then, to me, the great part about that was watching the machine drop into place and start immediately. First thing that they did was they discredited the guy immediately, made him lose his job, his wife, his kids, everything else. You actually got to see that machinery in play, how that works, so that all of a sudden nobody will believe the guy. And then after the guy was discredited and nobody cared about him anymore, then they smoked him, because if they had taken him out in the middle of the entire thing, where his stories were gaining traction, that would have been a huge red flag for everybody. But once they could bury the guy, then they were free to take him out as soon as they could. They did not want anybody having that information that Gary Webb had.
Oh, absolutely. And, the two things about the Tom Cruise movie that I thought was, hey, that when Tom Cruise is sitting in that lady's attorney general's office in Arkansas, I mean, the FBI came in on him, the DEA came in on him, the CIA came in. This is the God's truth. I'm not even lying. And the county mounties, the local sheriffs came in on him, and they all got him in the office. And she gets a phone call, and it's from Bill Clinton. So she asks everybody who's the governor at the time to clear the room. And she talks to Bill. She walks out and says, "Take the cuffs off of him."
Yeah, let him go.
And you let him go. And watch the mouths of the rest of these people just fall off. And the thing about this was, too, he's sitting there. He goes, they're going to let me go. And they're like, yeah. He goes, I'll tell you what. He goes, I'll just buy each and every one of you guys a Cadillac. He goes, bribery is another charge, Barry. He goes, oh, no, I'm just going to give it to you. He goes, I'm just going to give you a Cadillac. And then the woman came out and take the cuffs out. He goes, I would have given you guys a Cadillac. You should have took the car. And they're shaking their heads. And that was a great scene. And then he walks down the staircase. But then the second great thing I think in the movie with American Me was, in the end of the movie, after unfortunately they murdered him. I mean, and I believe it was. Yeah. Face it. I think it was the Clintons and the CIA that killed him. Okay, that's just me.
They kind of left it open in the film to.
Yeah, I know,
make it seem like
but it definitely wasn't the cartels, in my opinion. It was them.
Yeah.
But the thing about it was that at the very end of the movie, Nick, because I saw the movies in bits and parts, but it was pretty amazing. In the very end of the movie, the local police are doing their preliminary things, and the guy opens up the trunk. A federal officer, an FBI agent, walks up, says, "Hey, we'll handle it from here." Lifts the trunk because Barry had made tapes and records of everything he did.
Uh-huh.
And they took everything in Barry Seal's trunk, and that the FBI and the CIA have today. So that's kind of interesting. If some people watch the movie, you're like, when you get to that scene in the movie, you'll be like, oh, that's what Wendy's talking about, because it's fairly significant. And that's why I think, even though this is like an introduction movie, that a lot of people will understand, like, oh my God, this did really happen. This is real. This is real.
Everybody knows that what happened with Barry Seals was a setup. They know anybody with two brain cells to rub together would know that Barry Seals was taken out by the CIA because they did not want him blabbing about
operation,
what he was doing.
Yeah,
running the dope in and everything. And if that's the thing that I didn't like about the movie, was the fact that they made it look like he was doing this all on his own. I mean, he may have presented it that way, but he's running a CIA plane. His job is supposed to be running guns down to
the Sandinistas.
Yeah, whoever it is that are receiving the guns.
Yeah.
And then he's going to be flying dope back, and the CIA, they knew about it, but they were going to let him keep on doing it. And it was just like, you got to be kidding me. I mean, I have almost no respect for the CIA, but I just don't think they would be so stupid as to let that kind of thing go, because you're going to start attracting attention that you really don't want. When you're trying to run a covert war like they were trying to do down in Central America, it's like the last thing you need is that your guy is going to start attracting attention from the DEA, the drug cartels, and everybody else who's got their radar up for that kind of stuff coming in.
I agree. Yeah, I agree, Nick.
But
so we always recommend
there's a book out there. There's a book out there called Dope Inc. that was put out by the Lyndon LaRouche many years ago.
Yeah,
it gives a very good perspective and description of how the drug network run and the drug industry. But one thing that they make a point of is that the Queen of England is the biggest protector of the drug trade. She controls the policy of all the banks in the Caribbean, the Cayman Islands, in Hong Kong, the Bank of Shanghai, the Bank of Hong Kong, the Bank of Nova Scotia, Citibank, all these big banks across the world that launder drug money. So she is really like a big umbrella over the drug trade. And who would ever think that the Queen of England is part of all that?
Well, everybody.
That operation.
I think everybody would at this point. I mean, the Queen of England is, I mean, they make her out to be some nice old lady and whatever. Oh, I'm getting on in years and whatever, and I love England. It's like, oh, come on, she's part of the one of the biggest crime families on the planet. I mean, there's a reason why the was it? Is she the Windsors or the Tudors? I don't remember which.
No,
but
Diana was a Windsor.
Yeah,
Diana was a Windsor.
I'm not really. I don't really care. You know, we fought a war 240 years ago, so I don't really have to care about the royal family. But there's a reason that they took over England and created the empire as big as that they did. I mean, they were pretty ruthless. I mean, it's kind of stupid to think that they wouldn't be the same ruthless people that they were back then. You know, there was an incident up in Canada where Parliament of Canada was going to overrule some laws and create their own or whatever. She flew over to Canada, and within a day they said, "Okay, we're not doing that anymore," and she flew right back to England again. I mean, she is not. They know who she is. Everybody knows who she is, and if anybody really pays attention, scratch the surface a little bit. She's not a nice little old lady. So neither are anything else. I mean, Charles might be a doof, but I can bet you there's other people in the family who aren't.
Yeah. You know what worries me is that you have the marijuana has been legalized, is being legalized in many states, but at the forefront of that movement is George Soros, who's an agent for the Rothschild banking family. And again, we go back to the Rothschilds and the British East India Company running drugs. Well, George Soros is an agent for them, and he is the one responsible for the propagation of the legalization of marijuana. Now, on the surface, it appears to be like a good thing. You know, marijuana is not that harmful, and we save space in jails because there's a lot of people with just small crimes of smoking marijuana in jail, and that saves spaces. You know, that is the excuse. However, what's going to stop this whole movement, this whole legalization of drugs, into expanding into legalization of cocaine, legalization of heroin, all these other drugs? If you look at Europe is infested now with people using drugs. I think in certain sections of Amsterdam and some of the big cities, it's legal to smoke, to inject yourself with whatever drugs you want.
Hey, they do it in San Francisco.
Very stabilized. What's that?
They do it in San Francisco, right in the subways.
Yeah. And then, so the societies are becoming destabilized, which is the aim, of course, of the Illuminati, to destabilize societies, uproot societies, create chaos in preparation for the world government. And so, you know, here we're gradually heading in that direction, especially like in Europe. I think they got something called a universal income, where people just get money. The government just gives them money because there's not enough jobs, but people go out there and get high. Now, Here in our state, there's moves by certain congressmen to create a universal income. So we see a repetition of what's happening in emulation of what's going on in Europe, and that's what worries me. Where are we headed with all this? Are we going to become another Europe?
I don't know. I don't think so. But quite honestly, I think that drug legalization has got to be done on a state by state basis, and it can't be some big one overarching federal government dictate, because the Constitution doesn't really give the federal government that much authority to do it. I mean, 10th Amendment states pretty specifically, all powers not delegated to the federal government by the Constitution belong to the states or the people. So it's got to be a state-by-state issue. Now, if California or Colorado or whoever wants to legalize marijuana, I don't got an issue with it. I don't see how, personally, I don't see how the bank. Well, here's the thing. I don't see how the cartels and everything are going to have that much interest in it, because how they're going to make any money off it, because people can grow it for themselves. It's not that hard. People have been doing it forever, and it's been illegal to do it. So, and they've still been doing it. As far as some of the other drugs and things goes, yeah, I see the devastation that they do. I've been to LA. I've seen the people shooting up on the streets. I've seen the people high. I've had to work with people who were on meth. And it's nightmarish. If you want to do that to yourself, this is the libertarian part of me talking. If you want to do that to yourself, knock yourself out. But in the end of the day, do not expect me to pay for your rehab. And if you dare come into my house to take my stuff to feed your drug habit, you're gonna get shot. And I'm not gonna be trying to shoot you in the legs or anything. I'm gonna kill you. And you can't have nobody to blame but yourself. And that's where I think we gotta take it. If you want to spend your life as a complete wreck, don't expect the taxpayers to pick up the bill for you. You got a choice not to do that stuff. I mean, and it's if anybody's ever, you want to do a Scared Straight program, take a group of kids to downtown LA, down by the Mission, and walk them through those 10 cities. I guarantee you those kids will never do dope. But but if that's the way you choose to live your life, knock yourself out. I'm not going to tell you no, but at the same time, if you choose to do that, you bear the consequence of it. It's called personal responsibility, something that the Democrats and the liberals have not figured out yet.
Right, I agree. I concur. There you go. I concur.
Well, see, the moment you legalize one drug, and especially with the kind of sinister people behind, like George Soros, who represents the Rothschilds, and their history, their despicable history, I get kind of scary as to whether they're going to expand that operation to higher drugs. And the moment you legalize, let's say, cocaine, you're going to expose a greater amount of the population to it, and that's where the big profits are going to come from.
The population can get it now, whether it's legal or not. But here's the other thing. If you legalize, here's the thing too. If you legalize it, you also take the incentive away from the people who are manufacturing it to keep producing it, because the cost of it's going to go down. They're not going to be making any money off of it because it's not. And that's the one thing that another thing people don't seem to get is that once you make something illegal, there immediately becomes a black market for it. Once you create that black market, the price on those items skyrocket. And this is the unintended consequences that the Democrats and the liberals have never figured out about trying to make everything illegal. There becomes a black market for it. We're going to raise the taxes on cigarettes to the point where, average Joe can't afford them. What are they going to do? They're going to either go out of state, they're going to go to the Indian reservations, or they're going to go somewhere else and pick up black market cigarettes. And the price on those are going to keep going up. They're going to be lower than the cost of the ones in the stores in order to keep the customers going back. That's because cigarettes are not wholly illegal. You make something like marijuana illegal. How much the people who were fighting to keep marijuana illegal were the cartels and the outlaw biker gangs, because that was like almost like bread and butter to them. And then you make it legal, people can start getting it for themselves in legal stores or growing it for themselves. It doesn't cost. The price, automatically the value of the product goes down. Okay, you make something illegal, the value of the product goes up.
but you expose a much larger portion of the population to it. Look, let me ask you something.
They're exposed to it anyway.
Let me ask you something. In the prohibition days of liquor, the Meyer Lanskys and the Bronfmans, all these people that were profiting from the illegal sales of liquor.
Absolutely.
Did they make more money? Let me ask you. Did they make more money then now that it's legal and it's proliferated everywhere? Every liquor store has.
They
liquor?
became.
They make much more money now.
They made billions of dollars during the prohibition because people would pay through the nose to get the stuff. Once prohibition ended, the cost per volume, a fifth of liquor, came way down. So, you know what all prohibition did? It gave rise to the mafia families, especially in Chicago. Definitely in New York. It gave them tons of money because they were running in bootleg whiskey to sell in the speakeasies that were all over the inner cities. They were told people you can't have beer anymore, you cannot have liquor anymore, and people would go out there and they would pay huge amounts of money to get a hold of it, to get messed up on the weekends. I mean, how do you think that the mafia crime families made all that money? I guarantee it wasn't through drugs at the time.
Yeah. Okay.
It was prohibition made them. It's like drug prohibition now is making multi-gazillionaires out of the drug cartels. I mean, they make more money than is the entire worth of some small countries because of this stuff.
This is not my topic, but. I somewhat agree with Carlos. Now, I'm familiar with the Volstead Act and prohibition, and the fact everything you said was true, Nick. Those who craved alcohol would pay a very high price, and so they made billions of dollars. But now, as I think Carlos has pointed out, they're making trillions of dollars legitimately. And
it's all kept within a very.
I think the same is going to be true of cocaine, the cocaine industry. Right now, it is illegal, and they're able to command a high price. But once it becomes legal, the cocaine industry is going to thrive even more because they're going to have a much larger market.
But they won't be. I'm not arguing in favor of hard drugs. Believe me when I tell you this. I'm just trying. I'm looking at this from a strictly economic point of view and a government interference point of view about your personal responsibility. Okay, again, I'm coming at you this from a very libertarian angle, not the current set of libertarians because I have no idea who the hell they are. They doing drugs. I mean, it's probably about the dumbest damn thing you could ever do. Putting that crap in you, it's gonna wreck you. If you do it, you take on the consequences of having to do it. On the money side of it, on the economic side of it, it's going to bring the cost of it way down. The drug cartels and all of those guys are not going to be making as much money on it. The cost of production is going to end up. Because, I mean, considering what they got to do, the cost of production for that stuff is probably not going to be worth them making it anymore. They probably will. There's probably going to be a lot of money, but the people who are going to end up controlling it are probably going to be the same people that control Big Pharma now.
Yes. Well, for example, right now the farms they're not selling their vegetables and fruits as much, and they've gone more into marijuana. And the people that are selling marijuana supposedly legally now, I think are making a fairly good profit.
Well, look at what happened. Look at what happened in Afghanistan. We went over there, and we were trying to get the people to start growing crops, food crops and all of that, and they weren't making enough money.
That's the big lie.
They started growing poppies.
Well, let me explain a little bit about that, because I happen to be a personal friend of the former finance minister of Afghanistan when it was a constitutional monarchy. And at the end of the Afghan war against the Soviet Union, the CIA and the Pakistani ISI, a very similar organization, encouraged the very infamous Madras to release their fundamentalist students from India and Pakistan and send them to Afghanistan to enforce Islamic law, and they were called the Taliban. And also, Pakistani businessmen, if you want to use that word for king drug pens, went into Afghanistan, mainly into one particular province, and they encouraged the farmers to start growing the opium poppy.
Mm-hmm.
And in the that particular valley, instead of rebuilding the irrigation system, they found that they could do just dry farming with the opium poppy, and it would thrive, and it would make a good profit. Now, on the other hand, Nick, if they had brought in irrigation, they would have been able to grow crops that would have supported 40% of the Afghan population.
Right.
And basically, the drugs have become legal, and the standard of living and the nutritional value and the daily caloric intake has gone way down. The Afghans have almost a starvation diet compared to the rest of the world. And the same thing's going to happen here in California because the farmland is going to be converted into legitimately selling drugs, and so marijuana and other types of crops will be grown here, which will basically replace the market that we had throughout the United States and the world for vegetables and fruits. And
yeah, but they've been deliberately destroying the farms in California for years at this point. You know, and quite, the farmers who have all that land, they're getting killed with all the. So I mean, there's an active effort to drive the farms out of California to begin with. If they would allow them to irrigate their farms again, and I mean, how many of those almond plantations got wrecked? I've even seen the effects of it out here, where just buying something like simple as broccoli has become a pain because they import the broccoli from California, and it's like there isn't any.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just have a whole different way of looking at it. It just seems that every time the government makes something illegal, it's not for our best interest. There's always somebody else at the top who's going to make a lot more money as long as the stuff stays illegal, and they can classify. I mean, there's a reason marijuana is classified as a Schedule I drug.
Yeah.
Let me say something here. I was a cocaine addict back in my 30s. I hate to admit it, but I was. And I was really not predisposed to it, but I was approached by a young lady in a party and said, hey, why don't you try a little bit of cocaine here? And I said, oh, okay, it was just recreational. Well, guess what? I got hooked. Now, imagine, but lucky for me, a year later, through a lot of struggle, I was able to get off of it. And I never been back to it again because I see how addictive this drug is. Now imagine, when cocaine is legalized and heroin, okay, which is what I'm against. Every liquor store is going to have cocaine and heroin there. And let's say I have a little party here. I have a few drinks and they say, hey, guys, now let's go try something. It's legal now. Let's go try some of that cocaine and heroin they got at the liquor store. Well, guess what? I guarantee 80-90% of those people will become addicted because these drugs are so addictive. And I can tell you firsthand, I went through it, and it was hell. at the end getting off of it. I got off of it.
I don't.
So God helped me a lot.
Again,
But
that's got to
we're
come.
gonna have a problem.
That's got to come down to personal choice. I mean, like I've said before, doing those kind of drugs is probably about the stupidest thing on the planet you could ever do to yourself. But if you choose to do it, that's on you. But
But if you
I'm
have
not.
a few drinks out there and the thing is legal, you're going to become very stupid. I mean, no, I'm not saying you personally, but people are. Come on, once you start, letting your guard down and your inhibition, you're going to go try that stuff.
Yeah, but you also got to think about it this way: just how much power do you want to give to the government to regulate your lives every day? They've taken over so much as it is. And again, I'm not advocating this because I like drugs or anything. I'm more advocating getting the federal government out of it. Let the states make up their own rules. They want to keep the stuff illegal, then the federal government shouldn't have any say in it. The federal government has taken over so much power to themselves, in violation, to me, at least in my opinion of it, in violation of the Constitution, that this is something that they should not be involved in. You can't show me in the Constitution where it says that they should be involved in that part of it. They've taken too many liberties of it. This is why I think the federal government needs to step aside.
And Carlos, I can tell you that the cocaine and the heroin, if it became legal, would not be sold in liquor stores. It'd be like in pot stores, you have to go to marijuana dispensaries. There would be coke or heroin or that type of a dispensary. You'd have to go to a dispensary. But I can tell you something right now. The pot stores have unbelievable security. Yeah, they only take cash. They can't put the money in the banks because they call that laundering the money. I'm just being honest. And so
yeah, that's a federal issue too.
Right, that's a federal issue right there. And so listen to me, Carlos. If it became legal, and it ever did, they would have dispensaries. You couldn't get that at a regular liquor store. You'd have to go to a dispensary.
But the dispensaries are expanding. There's so many of them. I used to work across the street from a dispensary, and there were lines all day long of cars going in there all day long.
A lot of people want to get high.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe how many people were going in there, man.
Yeah.
And you have to understand something.
Well, you look at it this way. Look at it this way too. Okay. Let's bring up the idea of heroin. Okay, just because that one's on the table. Okay, again, you want to do that, knock yourself out. I don't care. You deal with the consequences of what happens to you, regardless of what they may be. But when some city councilwoman, I forget who she was, but she came up with the idea: doesn't the city provide the heroin addicts with clean needles? And I'm like, all right, how much is that going to cost the taxpayers? There's the crossing the line right there, because now you're telling the taxpayers that they got to start supporting somebody's habit.
Well,
that's not exactly the opposite of how that needs to work.
Well, in Orange County in Southern California, they want to dispense on free needles. And people said, hey, we don't want to do that. There's needles everywhere, and we'll stop this. They go, no, this is crazy.
Yeah. Every time there's a government solution to a problem, the problem gets worse.
And so they want to give free needles, so they're just promoting the drug. And they sit there and say, well, they're trying to stop HIV and AIDS. It's the biggest lie going. It's just the government pushing their own drugs and their own narrative.
Well, it's a way for them to take money away from people, redistribute it somewhere else, feel good about themselves, take a little off the top, stick it in their back pocket as well. Make themselves look good in front of their constituents, but it's exactly the wrong way to address the problem.
Well, for example,
and you want to talk about the legalization being wrong. Our government is the biggest pusher of opiate that there is to begin with. Why do you think we have such an opiate problem to begin with? Every time I go to the VA and I complain about, I got pain, and believe me, I got some stuff that'll probably knock your socks off at sometimes. Maybe not as bad as others, but it's some pretty decent on the Richter scale of whatever the pain Richter scale is. the first thing that they want to do is they want to give me opiate drugs, and they do. And even if I tell them no, they still give them to me. And then their really insidious part of it is that they, as soon as they keep you on it long enough, they cut you off. You know, this is why you see a lot of these military guys are coming back with, all battle scarred, PTSD, missing limbs and whatever, and they end up turning drug addict because, the VA will cut them off. There's only so much we're allowed to give you. And it's like, well, I'm like a complete addict now. It's like, well, we can't help you with that. And, so I...
Hey, listen, on a different note here real quick, because I got to get off. But
all right.
Do you think they're using laser weapons to
start the fires up north and around? Yeah, I think they use definitely in Reading. They lost 800 homes at least. I think.
Well, but here's the thing. You can tell that they are using something because look at the way that the houses burned. The houses burned. All the trees around them are still there.
And the cars have been burned. The cars, they melted.
So yeah, right. I know. It's so you look at that's not accidental. I mean, that's got to have something to do with this whole thing that Deborah has been on our show talking about for weeks now about the whole grid network, the 5G grid network, and all of that. I mean, it may sound a little bizarre to some people, but you look at some of the results that have been going on. It's like you got to scratch your head a little bit and say that's not how fire acts. You got those trees, some of those trees that were in that proximity to those houses. And at the temperature those houses burn, those trees would not still be alive.
Yeah.
That's a question that definitely we're going to ask for Deborah next week.
Yeah. Carlos, I don't know if you recall.
I think the Illuminati is selecting different methods of devastating areas in the Caribbean and they use hurricanes. In Mexico they use earthquakes, and here in California they're using fires.
Absolutely, and Greece is on fire. Sweden is on fire. It's not just us. It is around the world, Carlos. Things are happening.
Yeah, truly. It's very scary, very scary. Well, listen, I got to get off, but great conversations.
Okay, guys. Thank you, Carlos. Right. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Carlos. We'll talk to you next time.
Bye. Bye.
Let's see, how many minutes before the break?
I don't know. Probably only a couple.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll finish off, and John, I'll let you give your thing after we come back from the break. But all kinds of stuff is happening fairly fast. It is unreal.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting. You can argue both sides of the drug trade argument.
Yeah, I know.
And both sides have merit to it. So it's like, okay, where do you find the ground there that's actually reasonable? Yeah. I mean, I'm just for getting the government out of people's lives personally. I mean, and then there's other people that say, drugs are devastating. We need the government to do something. Yeah, but it's like if you look for the government to solve your problem, it's never going to work. They always screw it up. Right. They always come in with an ulterior motive. There's always somebody up there that's got their hand in the cookie jar who wants to make money off of this. So they're gonna only make the rules so that it benefits them. That's where a bigger problem comes in.
Nick, what I wanted to bring out was not every one handles liquor like California. For example, I think in Oregon and Washington, and I know British Columbia, the province, they have these state stores or province stores, and they're more like dispensaries in the. There's something attractive about the stores. They just basically have a counter and the liquor in the background, and you tell them basically what you want, and they take it off the shelf and sell it to you if you have the right credentials and everything.
Okay, that's fine. That becomes a state issue then. That's exactly what it's supposed to be.
But by contrast, here in California, we have the Trader Joe's, we have the liquor supermarkets, basically, with all sorts of toys and gimmicks and for the kids as well.
One of my favorite was Bevmo. Yeah, Bevmo was great. It was like a department store for liquor.
Yeah. we've made it so convenient here in California, especially Southern California, to have access to it. And so a small child growing up seeing this very youth-friendly looking environment is...
Well, that's only, again, but that's only if parents are irresponsible enough to be bringing their kids into a liquor store.
Well, a lot of kids don't have the parents' guidance, Nick. That's a sad thing.
Well, that's more government interference, because the government has worked for decades to be breaking up the families through the welfare systems, food stamps, all that.
Oh, God, yeah, that's a whole issue in itself.
Yeah, it's all government interference, really just digging up everything that they get their hands on. All right.
Okay, guys, that's the break. We're going to be right back with John to talk about something, but we'll be right back. Hold on, and then we'll bring on some other subject matters as well. Don't go anywhere. This is Granada Forum Radio program. My co-host Dick Pearson and Richard Kane, my producer. Hold on, we'll be right back.
Okay, we're back.
We're back.
I was just listening to the very end of that, where it sounded like we were like in a hollow cave or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounded kind of cool.
Okay. Nick, John wants to bring up a particular subject matter. So, John, are you there?
I'm here.
Go ahead.
Did you want Nick? Did you want to go ahead with something first, or
no? Go ahead.
Okay. I want to sort of take you back in time to the year 1980. President Carter was then president of the United States.
No, 1983. Carter wasn't president.
I'm sorry. I thought I said 1980.
Well, 1980. Yeah. Yes, 1980. Carter was just leaving his then, and then Reagan was running for office. Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. Very good. So this was the last year of the Carter administration, and we had boycotted the Summer Olympics in Moscow because the Soviet Army had invaded Afghanistan and occupied that nation. And yours truly was on his way from LAX to Narita, Japan, to attend an international geographical congress sponsored by the IGU, the International Geographic Union, held in Tokyo. And during that nonstop flight from California to Tokyo, I can recall, because it was daylight, and you may recall, the further you go north during the summertime, the more hours you have of daylight. But I could see these Aleutian Islands and the towering volcanic peaks, a whole chain of them. And then I recall when we came in visual proximity of some of the Kuril Islands controlled by the Soviet Union, a Soviet Sukhoi 16 interceptor aircraft came right alongside the starboard window where I was seated, and I think I could see the pilot's face pretty clearly during that brief moment. And at the convention, or the Congress, whatever you want to call that conference, I had a chance to meet with my counterparts who were Soviet or Russian geographers, and one of them even gave a talk in broken English by the name of Yevgeny Primakov, who basically did a lot of activity in the Middle East, which some of you are already aware of. And then it was over, and a few years later, in 1983, we were informed that a Korean airliner, a 747, just like the one I was on, was apparently destroyed in midair, and there were no survivors. Well, years later, when I did commercial radio, I had as a guest a person who was in contact with Israelis, and one of these was a man by the name of Avram Shifrin, and he made a policy of interviewing every single Russian Jew who relocated from Russia or the Soviet Union at that time to Israel. And information started to come up about the fact that KAL 007, or Korean Airlines Flight 007, did not crash. It was hit by a rocket, a K-8 rocket fired from a Sukhoi 16 interceptor, and some damage was done to the tail or rear portion of the plane, but somehow it was able either to make an emergency landing on Monaran Island or ditch at sea very close to that island, which is just west of Sakhalin. And everyone survived. All 269 members of the crew and all passengers survived, only to be captured shortly thereafter by the KGB. And I think a few people were able to make short telephone calls, which were quickly cut off. And those were about the only clues that we had that at the time, back in 1983, that some people might have survived that tragic event. But apparently all of these people were taken to various prison labor camps in the Gulag throughout Russia and Kazakhstan within the former Soviet Union. And the small infants and young children were separated from their parents and placed in orphanages according to their ethnicity and race in various parts of the Soviet Union. And hardly anything was heard except later, as I pointed out, and this is going into this century, this millennium, that there were some contacts. Now, there are many reasons why this plane was supposedly attacked. The first thing that was brought out by the Soviets was that this particular flight, KAL 007, had violated Soviet airspace. And they held a press conference, which was televised on practically all of the news programs, showing an outline map. Now, an outline map is basically just a line showing the coastline or the boundaries of an area, with nothing more except maybe labeling a town or something of particular interest. Well, on this outline map, all they had was the outline of the Kamchatka Peninsula, Sakhalin, and the Soviet Far East mainland. And then they show this dashed line, which indicates the air route taken by KAL 007. And what was of interest was where this line was drawn across the Kamchatka Peninsula. Well, if that were true, it would have gone directly across the highest mountain along and on Kamchatka, which is or happens to be the 13th highest mountain in the world. And keep in mind that even though it was supposedly at nighttime, that during that time of year, that far north latitude, it is not completely dark. So that mountain would have stood out fairly clearly if indeed they had gone over that area. So I concluded very early when they showed that that the Russians or the Soviets were lying, and in all probability that aircraft never veered off course, but it was deliberately shot over international waters, which of course is a violation of international law. but things like that don't matter. Now, the Russians were under the impression that 2 VIPs from Washington would be aboard that flight, which went from JFK and made a stopover in Anchorage, Alaska, before going on to Seoul, Korea. They were Senator Jesse Helms and U.S. Congressman Larry McDonald, also a physician, and a presidential candidate on the Democratic ticket at that time. And at the last moment, Senator Jesse Helms had to change his plans, so he took a flight on another Korean airliner out of Dallas, Texas, a few hours later. And so that plane that Helms was on trailed McDonald's plane, which was KAL Flight 007, and they had a chance to chat and discuss a few things at Anchorage in the waiting room while the planes were being refueled during that stopover. And then Korean Airlines 007 took off first, and that was the one that was fired upon. It is my belief to this day, after corresponding with the late Jesse Helms and also having a face-to-face conversation with him when he was out here in Santa Ana during 1986, that he was targeted because at that time he was chairman of the U.S. Senate Subcommittee on Latin America. And of any American official, he would have been, from the Soviet perspective, the most knowledgeable of the Caribbean and Central America. And apparently at that time, the Kremlin in Moscow was working on a 5-year plan for another attempt similar to the Cuban Missile Crisis decades earlier, in 1982. And they wanted either to capture him or have him assassinated. But you have to keep in mind that that plane held approximately 269 members of the crew and passengers, and 62 of the passengers were Americans. And Helms wasn't even on that plane. It was tragically commandeered and forced to land where it did. And to this day, 35 years later, it will be commemorated on August 31st on the other side of the international date line, or September 1st, 2018, on this side of the international date line, the 35th anniversary of this terrible event. And I don't know if there are any survivors at this stage. Larry McDonald was last seen in the Karaganda industrial region of Kazakhstan in 1995, and that was the last time he was seen. And you have to understand that these men and women placed under these conditions in prison labor camps are not going to necessarily live out to a ripe old age because of the intensive labor that they are expected to undergo on a daily basis. So basically, that's my story, and it would end there, except for the fact that there were two other things that happened that year. On September 1st, 1983, we had Korean Airlines Flight 007. On October 23rd, 1983, the U.S. Marine barracks were bombed in Beirut, Lebanon, supposedly by factions affiliated with Iran. And 2 days later, on October 25th, 1983, was the U.S. invasion of Granada, which was depicted in the film with Clint Eastwood called Heartbreak Ridge. But in reality, that was the second missile crisis. The main and primary mission for that invasion was to stop the building of that 9,000-meter airfield, which was required for Soviet giant air transports that would be carrying fully integrated mobile missile launch sites to Nicaragua. But they needed to have a stopover and refueling point somewhere in the Caribbean, and Granada was the ideal spot. And from there, they would have gone on to a clandestine airfield called Punta Huete, north of Managua in Nicaragua, which was earlier pacified by Stasi and Spetsnaz units, where they came in and, killed all of the peasants and villagers in those small hamlets. And from there, the new version of the intermediate range ballistic missile, which had a range of being able to fire within a radius of 3,300 miles, nautical miles, would have been able to strike the United States, again without warning, just as was the case back in 1982 during the Cuban Missile Crisis. But it was never publicized during the Reagan administration. You have to understand that President Reagan was still somewhat incapacitated from the assassination attempt going back to 1981. So the White House was being run, I guess, mainly by Nancy at that time. But it was never publicized. The only thing that was ever publicized was that we invaded Grenada to rescue the medical students from a Marxist regime on Grenada that was portrayed by Clint Eastwood in that film Heartbreak Ridge. But in reality, during that 5-year period, the Soviets were again planning to strike at the United States. And in all probability, they did not want any of these Americans or other passengers aboard KL Flight 007 to ever be released, because they could not take the chance of any information leaking out beforehand of their attempt to destroy America at a time when supposedly we thought they were somewhat civilized. So that's basically my story, Wendy and Nick. Unfortunately, the way things are, it looks as if not any American officials in the House or Senate are aware of the 62 Americans that are still in Russia, or the other of the 269 passengers and crew who were aboard KAL Flight 007. And again, if it had not been for the Israeli by the name of Avram Shifrin, in all probability, I would not be able to share very much with you other than my personal conversation with Senator Jesse Helms back in 1986.
Okay.
So, any comments or?
Well, I was just gonna kind of ask. I mean, is there any proof that they are actually there?
Yes. By the way, I should have said at the earlier program, there was one other website that people might be interested in. It's called the Survivors of KAL Flight 007. If you log in the words the Survivors of KAL 007, you don't have to put in the word flight, just KAL space 007. It will give you information that Bert Schlossberg had put together. He formed an international committee for the rescue of KAL 007 Survivors Incorporated. He carried on where Avram Shifrin left off.
Okay. Well, so what evidence has been presented that said that there were survivors from there? I mean, I know somebody can say that, there were survivors, but what evidence do they present?
Well, I must admit it's it's somewhat sketchy. But for example, many years ago, a few years after, actually several weeks after KAL Flight 007 was supposedly shot down, someone was listening to Kogo Talk Radio in San Francisco, and someone was surprised to hear a young woman who called in to talk about the fate of KAL 007 announce that her close friend's fiancé had been aboard that flight, and she went on to reveal that the fiancé had telephoned after the flight was down by a Soviet interceptor, which was that one that I alluded to earlier, the Su-16, and he regretfully informed her, his fiancée, that he was safe, but that he was certain he would never see her again. And then something was mentioned about as to whether or not anyone had followed through later with that information. And apparently some of these people who did receive information of that type were contacted by KGB agents here in the United States, and some of them were scared to say anything further about it. We think of the KGB as being active in the former Soviet Union or under a different name in Russia or the Commonwealth of Independent States.
They're FSB now, so.
Yeah. So, but for example, there was a fellow by the name of Walter O'Reilly, who was president of an organization called Forget Me Not, which was the umbrella organization for various POW and MIA groups.
Okay.
And
not for nothing, but his name was Walter O'Reilly.
Walter O'Reilly, yes.
Was his nickname Radar by any chance?
I don't have any information of this type.
I'm sorry, but that just.
But he reported that while on official business in the new Russian Federation. Now, keep in mind, this is after the Soviet Union dissolved in 1989 and replaced by the so-called Russian Federation. He was accosted at the steps of the former Lubyanka Central KGB prison by two men who surreptitiously said to him, quote, "We have your congressman." And O'Reilly's response was startled. And he said, "No, you don't," as he walked away rather rapidly. And then he realized that they must have been referring to Congressman Larry McDonald, who had been a passenger on KAL 007. He quickly returned to the steps, but the men were gone by then. There was also a Christian minister in Long Island, New York, who reported that while visiting Russia, he had contact with a Russian pastor who claimed that he had been imprisoned for his faith with a group of people whom he believed were the American contingent from KAL 007. They had arrived at the prison the same week as the shoot-down, initially clothed in Western civilian attire. They were then presently donned with the normal prison uniform. And this Russian pastor now lives on the west coast of the United States and still has contact with the Christian minister on Long Island. But he refuses to say anything further about the matter, fearing for the safety of his relatives in Russia and for his own safety in the United States. Certain individuals have circulated among the Russian immigrants in his area, warning him that threats lest any of them speak out about their prison experiences, that they will be dealt with, and
right. So there's a lot of stories coming out of people who have apparently run into the survivors.
Yeah. And later on, this Russian pastor agreed to speak with one of these investigators for this organization trying to look into KAL Flight 007, and even with though he was offered the use of a voice disguiser, he then decided to change his mind and not do the interview. He was that fearful. And so the story goes on with a lot of cases. They apparently were able to put together quite a bit of information related to Larry McDonald, because he was a high-profile figure, and because Shifrin still had contacts within the former Soviet Union and the new Russian Federation. He was able to contact some of the prison guards who were able to verify his presence at various prisons and labor camps throughout Russia and Kazakhstan. So, there, by the way, McDonald was known as prisoner number 3. But going through all of this information, Nick, the scariest thing that I came across was that in the years 1989 to 1990, the Russians were experimenting with so-called microwave, psychotronic, and electromagnetic devices, doing experiments that were conducted on humans. Deborah Tavares was telling us about the dangers of various types of radiation from cellular phones and smart meters and other devices. But here was a case where we found out that
the former Soviet Union was doing the same thing.
Yes, deliberately, and it's very possible that some of these American prisoners were being experimented on in the same manner. And of course, we do know that even our American embassy in Moscow was targeted with electromagnetic waves, which caused injury to many of the U.S. personnel there.
Right.
And probably some of the Russian personnel that were also working at that facility. So it doesn't look as if Russia is as peaceful as it is being portrayed by so many people nowadays.
It never has been. I mean, I don't care what side of the Cold War that we're on. Right. You know, whether we're adversarial or not, we're still adversaries. Putin isn't stupid. I mean, I don't disrespect the guy. I mean, you got to take your hat off to the guy at some point. The guy is pretty crafty about what he does, looking out for his country, keeping his own power in place and all of that. But, you know, you also have to have somebody in place who's going to have the smarts to know exactly what kind of game that Putin is playing. Barack Obama was absolutely clueless. As far as he would capitulate to just about anybody. I mean, I swear to God, I would hate to be Rome and have Barack Obama as emperor when the Visigoths came running over the hill. Not at that point it would have made a difference, but it would have been. I think the Visigoths' conquest of Rome would have been a hell of a lot easier, because he just would have went out there and just bowed right down to him and said, "Yeah, do what you want." But
I wonder if Barack Obama played the violin or the harp.
Yeah, he probably did. Well, if he didn't, he'd probably get up there and fake it anyway. He'd just go off a teleprompter.
Yeah, he likes to sing occasionally.
I have no desire whatsoever to hear that.
Yeah.
But you know, with Trump in place, you know, anybody can say whatever they want. They can pick and choose to hate Trump or love Trump, or, you know, whatever side of the aisle they want to pick. But at least there's another chess player on the board instead of a checkers player, I think, on this. But, you know, I mean, I swear to God, there's a lot of stuff that happened when the communists were the only party running the Soviet Union and the Cold War was going on. That's never going to come out because I can almost guarantee you a lot of that stuff has been destroyed. But, you know, as far as KAL goes, I have no idea what most have happened since then. You know, and the stories coming out of it, there being survivors. Yeah, maybe there were. I have no idea. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it because, I mean, we as a people have been lied to by our governments about just about everything at this point.
Yes. Well, that's the key word that convinced me that there were survivors when I found out more information later on, based on what I heard the Russians say initially, just a few days after KAL Flight 007 supposedly was destroyed in midair. When they drew this dashed line across this outline map and showing the alleged pathway of KAL Flight 007 right over the highest mountain in Kamchatka, which happened to be the 13th tallest peak in the world, I knew right then and there that they were trying to play us for fools. And if they had used a relief map or a topographic map, which basically showed the elevation on various parts of that peninsula and even Sakhalin Island and the Soviet Far East mainland, I think they would have made a very poor case. But by using an outline map and realizing that most Americans
they don't know how to read those
geography.
Well, they don't know how to read those kind of maps what all the lines mean on them. They're just like, oh, that looks really pretty. I don't get it, but you know, the lines actually stand for something. I know how to read those kind of maps.
Yeah.
I had to do it. That was part of our basic training, you know, when I was in the Marine Corps.
Yeah. But if I had the bucks, I would make a presentation with a 3D relief model showing those very high mountain peaks on Kamchatka Peninsula, and draw this dashed line over where the Soviets were accusing the flight of having violated Soviet airspace, and I don't think many people would believe the Russian story after that. But,
well, I don't know how anybody would believe the Russian stories about just about anything when it came out of the former Soviet Union anyway, because everything that they spread was propaganda to begin with. Yeah. You know, and it's kind of like listening to our government now. Well, at least prior to 2017, everything was propaganda, and you know, the mainstream media was the propaganda yarn spinners, and it's kind of like right now they're all like panicking and freaking out, and I'm like almost envisioning like what happened when Trump got elected. Yeah. And again, I'm not going to go out there and wave the flag and, you know, and champion Trump as the be all end all of every president that we've ever had. There have been better. But you know, it's almost like us coming out of the Soviet Union after the Soviet Union completely imploded, and you're still watching the remnants of it trying to maintain some semblance of power. I mean, watching CNN just completely destroy itself by literally just lying about everything to every extent, and watching the every bit of propaganda that's been going on through all forms of mainstream media at this point. And the only ones that you can almost even begin to trust are alternative media, because they're the only ones going out there with actual footage saying, you know, they're not making up stories or connecting dots that may not exist. Or else they're showing you this is what's really happening on the streets, and not even putting a spin on it. But you know, so you know, whatever happened with KAL happened with KAL. I have no problem whatsoever, accepting the fact that the Soviet Union. Yeah, well, I have no qualms whatsoever about understanding that Soviet Union lied about anybody surviving it or not. You know, and even afterwards, even after they that whole system collapsed.
Yeah, Now, a moment ago,
still continue to lie about it, because if they did those kind of experiments on it, they sure as hell wouldn't want anybody to know about it, because then they would have to be held responsible for it, because they had no power left anymore after that.
Right. Now, a moment ago, you were alluding to government power, but there's such a thing as multinational or corporate power. Now, a few days after I had heard that Russian press conference about KAL Flight 007, there was this nationwide television program. It was more of a business program, and they happened to have on their guest, I think, the CEO of PepsiCo or Pepsi-Cola.
Was this on Russian TV?
No, this is on American TV.
Yeah, okay.
And
I say, what the hell is PepsiCo doing on Russian TV?
And I called in on that program because you could call in toll-free and ask a question. And so I asked the following question to the president or CEO of PepsiCo, or whatever it was called back then, or Pepsi. And I said, if it could be proven without a doubt that Korean Airlines Flight 007 was deliberately shot down by the Soviet Air Force, would you still do business in the Soviet Union? And he sort of hedged here and there, but it was a definite yes. they would still continue.
Yeah, when they don't want to answer, you already know what the answer is.
Right. Because money is the most important thing, and
they don't care.
Right.
The globalists don't really care about anything about. Well, I mean, they might now with some of this other politically correct crap that's going on, but at some point, they're not going to turn down cash. That's not gonna. It's going to upset their stockholders, and they want to make sure that they have their golden parachute when they retire. So.
Yes. But on the other hand, some organizations that don't like Trump would come back with just the opposite type of an answer and say, "Oh, definitely, we would cut off all business if it had anything to do with Trump." It's very interesting how we're slanted one way in this nation. It seems like, except for the good of the American people. Well, that's basically what I wanted to share with you. But remember, folks, there are still 62 Americans unaccounted for in the Soviet Union.
Right.
But in all probability, none of them will ever be returned alive or dead, because some of them have extremities amputated, bodies badly disfigured by the labor and work and torture in the various prison camps in the Gulag. So that would be an embarrassment for the Russians even today to let that information get out to the world.
Well, John, I'm going to tell you something. Some more information will probably come out. Don't kid yourself. These things have a way of doing it because, I hate to say this, God, the universe, and it's something that more and more will probably come out. So it's a good piece, John, and it's a needed piece. Right.
And again, I urge people to go to that website. I think if they just type in survivors of KAL space 007, they'll basically get the same information that I've been able to get, other than, of course, my personal interview with Senator Helms in 1986. But thank you for the time.
No problem.
No problem.
Nick, how much time we got left?
About 20 minutes or so.
Pick a subject of your choice.
Let's get into some good stuff. Let's get into CNN. Let's get into the mainstream media meltdown that's been going on all week.
Well, me and Bob, because Bob is still on the line, we saw Death of a Nation last night. It was pretty decent. It definitely shows. If you go back and if you probably even Yahoo the race at CNN, the guy says, "Oh yeah, he took one state. Don't worry about it. We're gonna win. This is all over. This is just a preliminary." It's unbelievable, the meltdown that's happening, and the thing with Manafort, which you can go into, and everything else. So yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this earlier today about the Dinesh D'Souza's movie Death of a Nation.
Yeah.
And I had mentioned I had heard the interview that Rush Limbaugh did with him earlier this morning when I was driving around, and it was funny to me because I caught the part of the interview where he was talking about how much of a connection, more of a connection there was with the Nazis in Germany, during their time in power there,
right?
With the Democrat Party.
Right.
Meanwhile, in America, the Democrats are running around and they're calling Republicans or conservatives or real libertarians, not the Libertarian Party, which is God knows where the hell they are at this point. Libertarians, anybody who supports the country, the Constitution, whatever, they're running around calling them Nazis.
I know.
To me, it's kind of like. To me, that is like absolutely hilarious to watch the connections that he made especially when he said that the Nazi Party in Germany was actually looking at the Democrat Party platform in America, and they were taking when they were coming up with the Nuremberg laws, and they were going like that the Democrat Party in America is too extreme, even for them. I mean, these are the people that came up with the final solution, and they were saying that the Democrat Party was too extreme. I'm just kind of like going,
yeah.
Wow, isn't that something? I feel like the church lady. Isn't that special? If anybody remembers that, special? I'm dating myself, but
Yeah, it's great.
But it's kind of like going like, well, ain't that a slap in the face? So who are the real Nazis now, you little Antifa bastards?
Well, and also to Antifa, Black Lives Matter, it's all sponsored by George Soros, who is a Nazi.
No kidding.
A Nazi. He had no problem going and taking people's belongings or everything they own, throw them into camps,
believe me. He was working against his own people.
Exactly.
I mean, you especially, I think, would be really pissed at the guy just for that alone.
Listen, the guy is, as I call, George Soros is 150% complete evil. If you see this guy walking down the street, this is where you hop on the other side of the street because it's so bad. You don't
hop on the other side of the street. You treat that guy as a target of opportunity and do whatever you can to take him out.
He's a traitor. He's definitely a traitor. I can't believe he was never tried for wartime crimes. I
don't think they could really get him for that, but there's so much other crap that guy has done.
I know, but
he's
got so much. You know what? These people have benefited from it.
Yeah.
They took people's. It doesn't matter if you have a clock radio. It doesn't mean if you have a piece of china. These people took everything people owned, sold it, and they profit from it, Nick.
Yeah. Yeah, no
for
kidding.
For years and family, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, and what did he say? He got on to. It was in his book and in an interview. That was like the greatest time of my life.
Yeah, I guess the guy, you could definitely say the guy's in the misery. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, not his own, but everybody else's.
Yeah, else's, right, exactly. And I think, is Bob there? No, Bob's left?
No, Bob's off. Bob's gone.
Oh,
he was gone a little while ago.
Okay,
but,
well, yeah,
I mean,
how they're into this thing called loose. You could go into it. But, yeah, you can find that on the Internet. But yeah, these people are into they're into people's tragedy. They're into evil. They're into what do you call it? Dark matter. They want
a absolute. I believe, and I've heard this from other people. I mean, I've listened to people like David Icke, who I actually happen to like, regardless of what other people's opinions of the guy might be, with his reptilian things. I don't buy into that part of it. And even he says, I'm giving you the information, you take from it what you want. So guys like him and other people who have looked into some of the darker sides of people. And I'm not talking about these idiots in Hollywood who dress up in these weird costumes and have sex orgies and God knows what else that goes on there. but I'm talking about people who are really into some really pure evil stuff that would absolutely blow your mind if you even knew what it was. They literally get energized watching people suffer.
Yeah, tortured.
Yeah, I mean, not even just like in a dungeon where they might torture somebody even to the point of death. I mean, they get off watching mass suffering, mass torture, mass amounts of death. This is why we're at war all the time.
Well, there's supposedly, Nick, I know it sounds weird. I saw a movie. I asked a friend of mine about this, and it's called. I don't want to give it out because it's not a nice movie. But there's people in Europe and maybe even in America that capture people that, like, you could just be out for dinner or you're on a vacation, and all of a sudden, you find yourself in a particular situation.
Oh, I know which movie you're talking. You're talking about Hostel.
Yeah, there's places in Europe where they kidnap people, tourists. They kidnap people, and they torture them, and people pay to see it. This is degrading. This is disgusting. It's so sick I can't see straight.
Well, what's worse was when they go after the kids too.
Oh, I know. I mean,
look what Ted Gunderson was looking into all those years ago. Before
of course, and Ted was on the right track. Absolutely, absolutely.
He was talking about
Ted Gunderson is a hero. Yeah, Ted Gunderson is a hero.
When he was talking about the boats going out beyond the jurisdiction line, just so those people could get those kids out and do whatever to them and finally kill them at the end of the night.
Yeah, matter of fact, George Webb has brought this attention. George Webb has brought this to the attention because I believe George has mentioned this on his show.
Right. And everybody, and look at what's been happening recently. I mean, for the longest time, Hollywood was saying it, Washington D.C. was saying it. Some of the other major cities and elite groups were saying, oh, this stuff doesn't exist. It's all made up in your mind. And lately, these pedo rings have been being busted left, right, and center.
Oh, God. And major names have been dropped the last couple of weeks, this last week or so. I mean, major names, and you can go look it up. I mean, it's out there, and it's unbelievable.
I mean, yeah. I mean, once. Okay, maybe twice. Okay, coincidence. But man, when you start getting like a pedo ring where they bust 400 and plus people and rescue hundreds of kids, out of these places, and the trafficking ring has been going on for forever. Yeah. It's like, okay, this is not just an isolated incident. This has been going on for a while. This is a very well organized operation that's been going on, and people are paying to get kids and kill them because they get some kind of a massive charge out of it. And this is what George Soros is.
Yeah,
he loves
they're
other
evil.
people suffering.
They're satanic. This is like satanic occult. It's so sick that I don't think people can actually grasp it. Oh God, Nick, I lost my train of thought for something, but there's a movie, Nick, I saw a couple of weeks ago, and I was kind of amazed at it. You know what I mean? But I stayed with it, and Kevin Kline was in it, so you can look this up. Kevin Kline, the actor.
Yeah.
And it's about this kid gives a bicycle to his sister. He's in Mexico. But the mother's very frightened for the child to go out and ride the bike. So the girl's about between 9 and 12. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I don't know the film, but yeah.
Okay. And so I don't know the name of it. So as crazy as it sounds, so the kid goes out and rides the bike, and these people grab her. Now grab her. Listen to me. And the boy feels bad now, so he starts to go look for the sister, and he starts tracking her down. Well, Kevin Kline works for the federal government in some capacity, and somehow when the kid crosses the border to follow the kid or or Kevin Kline comes into a certain section into Mexico. I forgot how this works. They kind of run into each other. They come into it. They meet. Okay. Well, they start talking, and he finds out that the sister, that they have these places on the internet that you can just you punch in a certain code,
right?
And they'll tell you where to meet, and then they meet, and then you get to do whatever you want with the victim. It could be a child, a boy, a girl.
Yeah. By the way,
it's amazing.
Yeah, the movie's called.
It's so sick. But the thing is, it's based on a true story, Nick. This isn't just fiction.
Yeah. By the way, the movie itself is called Trade. It was done in 2007.
There you go. And thank you very much. And also, too, Nick, isn't it like there's 2 million children? Is it 2 million around the world, or 2 million children in America that disappear?
Well, they don't even know for sure. I mean, I don't even know how many counts are, because how many kids does CPS abduct every year from their parents? You know,
I know.
How many kids are living on the street with parents who neglect? I mean, you hear stories of the parents selling their kids, for drugs or whatever. Again, you take responsibility for that, parents, if you want to do that.
And that's why they want the open borders for easy access to more children.
Oh, I know.
No kidding. How many of those?
I can't see straight.
How many
I
of
agree,
those?
I agree, Rich.
How many of those kids that are coming up are with their parents?
I bet you have way less than less than half. I bet.
Oh, I'm sure it's less than half, but it's still a pretty large number. But because they're doing this, what's going on right now, the liberals and the Democrats are arguing against, you can't separate the kids from their parents, but how many of them are actually with their real parents?
Well, and the way they act like they actually care. I mean, they got to be the most disgusting, evil bunch of people.
No kidding.
And I mean, people can see right through it. They just look and sound ridiculous when they're talking about, the kids, we care about the kids. Yeah. They will rip a kid away from his parents in a New York second, man.
Well, look at what happened. I mean, you would really want to get how much they really give a shit about the kids being with their parents and everything. Look at the welfare system. Look at what that did. How that ripped. I mean, that was a Democrat Party, and I hate to argue lines along Democrat versus Republican, but for lack of a better example, look at what the Democrat Party did with the welfare system. They ripped families apart with that system. And
it
was
created slavery and feudalism in our country even bigger.
Yeah. So.
Poverty.
I mean, this whole
the war on poverty by the U.S. government. Yeah, they're good at war on poverty.
This whole crocodile tear thing about we can't take the kids away from their parents. And it's like you don't even have any proof that guy with that little kid is the father or a family member to begin with, and not some cartel smuggling kids up here for some kind of illicit trade to begin with.
Well, then apparently, too, when the government said, okay, well, we're going to do some DNA testing, apparently the Democrats didn't like that either because it was like a violation of some kind. You just can't win with them,
Yeah, you can't. And you know what's really funny? You can't make this stuff. You couldn't write this in a script.
I know, I totally agree.
Make it plausible. Nobody in Hollywood, no producer in Hollywood would buy it. Well, nobody's going to believe that. Well, here it is happening in real life,
Yeah.
And it's just some of the most, goddamn absurd crap you've ever heard. And like not even 10 years ago, they would argue the flip side of the coin on it,
Yeah,
so,
I agree.
This is why I absolutely despise politicians. I absolutely hate all of them. Republicans, Democrats, the current Libertarian Party, whoever. They're all such a bunch of, and this Cortez girl coming out of New York.
Wow.
I'm a complete socialist and whatever. I guarantee you, as soon as she gets into office, if she wins the election in November, she is going to be one of the biggest persons with her hands out, raking in millions of dollars, in a heartbeat. Socialism be damned. She's going in this for the cash. I guarantee it.
Who's actually running against her, Nick?
I really don't even know.
Oh,
free,
God, we need to
free
find
everything.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. She's running on
How
the
sad.
free stuff for everybody. And if she gets elected, she's going to be a millionaire within probably 6 months. It's
And
like,
to have
just like
free
Bernie
everything,
Sanders.
like free housing, free education, free medical, you actually have to force somebody to then, give you medical treatment or force someone to build you a house or
That was one of
force
the
somebody
things-
to educate you, man. I mean, it is just insanity,
That
man.
was
It gets
one
me
of the
so
things
mad.
That was one of the things Rand Paul was talking about in Congress was when they said healthcare is an absolute right. And he said, well, that means because he is a doctor, that you have the absolute right to conscript me against my will and not even have to pay me anything to treat you for a medical condition.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the way I see it too. It's insanity.
So
it's immoral. That's the whole problem with socialism is it's immoral to take anything that doesn't belong to you.
Yeah, but they don't see it that way.
I know.
Right.
Yeah,
They don't believe in private property.
The mentality doesn't work the same way with hardcore socialists, especially and communists. They think it's absolutely their right to have what you have without even working for it.
Yeah,
But
private property and making a profit is an actual crime.
It's evil. That's evil.
And you know what's unbelievable? Yeah, real quick, the elite or the guy people were talking about on the poverty level, and they sit there and say, yeah, he has the right for free education, he has the right for this. They're giving all these the people at the bottom level or any level free this, but once they get into power and they get private property, or then you can't take any away from them. So it's like they're literally it's outright theft.
Yeah, I mean, but it's hypocrisy at its absolute finest example of watching what these people do. I mean, they became the race pimps from the 1960s. I mean, Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson were the absolute perfect race pimps. They made a ton of money off it. These people are these are the socialist pimps going on right here, man. They know they can make a buck at doing this.
I agree.
And
Maxine Waters and Nancy Pelosi and all. It's unbelievable.
And the funny thing is that Nancy Pelosi isn't far left enough for them.
Keep in mind that these fires in Redding, California, are probably started by people that basically want to take away your private property.
I'm pretty sure.
Oh yeah, well it's definitely weaponized. It's a weapon. That's a weaponized fires. Absolutely.
All right, everybody, we're here about the end of the show, so we'll see you next week. So tune in.
And we thank you so much for listening. God bless.